Well, I think Stuart and I forgot to tell you yesterday what our final tab was when we went thrifting. And boy, we got a good haul. You guys apparently loved our thrifting adventure that we did earlier in the week. Our total tab, Stuart, as I recall, was about $87. And for that, I got a new trench coat, like 5 t-shirts, which some of you questioned, a denim shirt. Let's see, what else did we get? You got
some glass bookends.
Glass bookends, a cut glass ashtray that you like to use to hold manly items. What else did we get?
Man, the trench coat.
The trench coat was the biggest deal. I put back several of the vases and things like that. I thought I needed them like a hole in the head. So I put those back. And those are pretty good items that I can find most of the time. Oh, I got a couple of great belts. And yeah, and this weekend I'll show you some of the outfit suggestions from my sister Meg and from some social media inspiration, Pinterest and Instagram, or Pinstagram. How's that? Pinstagram. Yeah, so I got some ideas from that. But we had a great day thrifting yesterday. I think our overall impression was, number one, it's a lot more crowded than it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number two, prices have gone up slightly. And number three, the inventory of t-shirts they have is nothing good compared to what my sister has. Some of you were questioning my t-shirt choices, saying I needed a little help in the t-shirt aisle. Well, I would happily have help from my sister or my daughter-in-law for that. So Stuart, let's take a little break right here. And while we're taking a break, why don't you guys take the time to maybe share this video with some people in your life who might enjoy thrifting, who might enjoy gardening, whether new gardeners or established gardeners, and who might just be a little bit lonely during these cold and gray months of winter. Well, I left my wreaths up a little bit longer than I normally would because we had a beautiful snowfall last week. I think we got, 4 to 6 inches.
At least,
Stuart, if you want to pan around, you can see how there is still snow on the north-facing house lawns. All of mine is gone, of course. I've got a little bit in the back, but boy, it was absolutely beautiful. Stuart came and you did a little bit of drone footage.
I can put some in this.
Yeah, maybe put a little bit. It wasn't as pretty as we would like because it had already started to melt.
We woke up and it was nice and cloudy and beautiful. We thought surely it's not going to melt that fast, and I think within 10 minutes of us saying
it was really starting to melt, and kids had come out and played in the snow and everything, which is, after all, that's what snow is for.
Yes.
But I digress. I took down my wreaths earlier or a little bit later than usual because I wanted them up during that snowfall so that we could get some images of how they look with snow on them, because it's just so pretty. And even though the inside of my house gets so cluttered, I think, with all of the Christmas decorations and everything, I really wanted to get those down and put away. But I always have a little bit of a hard time taking my wreaths down because they're so cheery when they are lit in the gray of January.
We figured that out.
Yeah, but the weather turned nice and consequently had to go ahead and get these wreaths down, and so we did. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was I guess the importance of sharing content, whether it's mine or other people's content that you find helpful. And this really became apparent to me. Last week I had some visitors who were here from Arkansas, and they just showed up, and it was just so lovely to see them. And then I had some other visitors from Kansas, and one of them commented that they found out about me because their sister had shared them with her, and it was just so nice and helpful, and how she had been going through a hard time, and it made her feel less lonely. So it is important, I think, to share resources that you find help you get through these dark days. When the light is low in the sky, our melatonin and serotonin levels aren't as high as they should be. It's important to share those kind of things. So I want to share with you this story. So I was talking to my buddy Jim Miller, who is also known as the Savvy Senior. He and I used to do Channel 4 together for years, and he's going to be a guest on our podcast series later on. And he was saying that, he said, yeah, apparently people share you a lot of places, because he was going on an African safari.
Wow.
And in the airport, he met someone who asked him where he was from, and he said he was from Oklahoma City. And they said, well, do you know this woman in Oklahoma City who gardens? So apparently people who live in the States are even sharing what we do here far and wide across the globe. And so it just makes me feel such a wonderful connection, such a wonderful connection to you guys. So, and I know it's kind of a depressing time of year. So definitely reach out. This isn't gardening, I guess, but definitely reach out to anybody who might be a little bit down in the dumps, who has seasonal affective disorder, who might need to get out in the sun or whatever, and I don't know, they just might be lonely, because loneliness, one of the things Jim and I were talking about is that loneliness is really an epidemic, particularly amongst the older generation. So do what you can in that regard. Share this or any other content you find helpful with your friends and loved ones, and we'll be back in a minute. Well, there's not a lot of active gardening going on outside right now in my December garden, but every single day I do try to come out and spend at least 10 to 15 minutes outside, regardless of the weather, because it just improves my mood. And I think that's what gardens can do even in the dead of winter, is they're just real mood enhancers. So you may ask, so Linda, what do I do when I'm out here? Well, I do things like this. I look for changes in the landscape, no matter how small. So one thing I noticed is I've got some tiny little bulbs finally starting to come up. Or I say finally, actually, they're coming up a little bit early. Now, I do not remember planting nor giving instructions for any tiny little narcissus to be planted along here. Typically this is just tulips, but I think maybe some of those bulbs got mixed in with the tulip bulbs, and when the guys planted them for me, and yes, I had help getting them planted this year. I did it for over 25 years, so now I get help doing it. But I've noticed that these are starting to come up, which makes me especially glad that temperatures have finally cooled down. We have finally gotten some hard freezes, which we need, because as you guys may or may not know, most of you know, for bulbs to really perform well in the spring, they need to go through, definitely through a cold period, and so that they don't start to sprout prematurely. Now, this variety of narcissus and typically, yeah, daffodils in general, those come up before tulips anyway. So I guess I'm not really surprised, given how warm our temperatures are, that a few of these are starting to...
You can tell what that is, basically.
Yeah, I can just tell from that tiny little tip. Now look, something will prove me wrong, but I believe those are tiny little daffodils. Now, Stuart, if you come around here with me, I'm also noticing that they're coming up in these pots. So I planted some in here underneath the violas and the pansies, and look, they're starting to come up in here too. So those should be very, very sweet. And then when it gets warm, I'm not going to do it now. There's no point. We're supposed to have a real cold Arctic blast come in next week. But if temperatures were starting to reliably warm and remain even as they are today, and I think our high today is in, what's it in, the 40s? I think maybe 42 or something in the sun. I would probably come out here and start deadheading some of these, but I am not going to do that, again, because an Arctic blast is coming in. And the other thing is that whatever, whether it's just foliage, whether it's dead flowers or whatever, all of that serves to insulate the plants a little bit. Surprisingly to me, it was a very pleasant surprise. The other day, Hubs came in and he said, honey, I've got a surprise for you. And I said, what's that? And he had cleaned up all of the leaves.
I noticed how nice it looks.
Yeah, that gather here. Sadly, some of those leaves that were cleaned up by my husband and also by the guys when they came and did their routine blowing and cleanup, a lot of them got blown off of my pansies and violas, but I'm sure there will be, in fact, I could borrow some of the leaves from over there. Yeah, and I probably will. I'll get my leaf scoopers and I will come over here and I will mulch these leaves with the bed. It's kind of tricky to keep the leaves off of the turf and into the flower beds, especially when the wind comes whipping down the plains. Now, the other thing, obviously, that I've noticed, and it is winter after all, is that the ryegrass that I overseeded over the Bermuda grass is now not the vibrant green it once was because it's gotten cold, but it nevertheless, I think, is pretty happy and healthy because we did get all of that moisture. And then a simple green up will occur in February or early March maybe when I come here, and as the temperatures do start to warm and the days get longer, I'll come in with some Milorganite, and that will make it really green up pretty quickly because I love having that green canvas upon which all of the beautiful flowers can then play and bloom. Now, something else that I noticed after that cold blast is how much bronzing I've got now, because it went from very warm to pretty cold almost overnight. And you can see here I've got lots of bronzing on a good number of my boxwood. So this, I believe, is a green velvet or green mountain. Look in the interior, how it's still green, but the exterior is bronze. It doesn't mean the plant is dying. It just means that probably I'm going to have to give it a really good feed in the spring, which I will. And I'll probably use some of that Top Buxus product that I have spoken with you about in the past. Noticeably, what has not bronzed very much, I am happy to report, are my boxwood villages, my better boxwood villages. So in contrast to this Green Mountain boxwood, which has bronzed, these better boxwood, they just don't seem to have that tendency.
Oh, wow.
To as great an extent. Now, some of them, like I notice a little bronzing on this one, probably based on its exposure, but nevertheless, that's just another thing to commend those better boxwood. In my assessment, what looks best right now in my winter landscape? Well, I'm going to tell you about that when we get back. Well, I haven't done an outfit of the day for a while, so let me start off with some Cool Jobs gloves. What I love about these is, look, they're thick and they have this furry lining. They have so many different styles, but when it's really cold outside, or even kind of cold, these are great. My Hubs uses these to bring in, when he brings in the firewood. So they are great for that, as well as working in the garden. My top is, my chapeau is a hat that my daughter-in-law gave me. I'm not sure where she got it, but I do like it. And by the way, happy National Hat Day. And in the description box below, we're going to put a couple of links to a couple of my favorite fedoras that I bought online, and definitely this time of year, especially next week as we go into very, very cold weather, you're going to want to make sure that your head and your ears are covered. My sunnies are Cole Haan. I think I got these at Burlington Coat Rack. I'm not really sure. I got them at some kind of store similar to that. Now I have to show you my scarf, you guys. So this is one of only 2 things I have knit in my life, but I saw this trick the other day. I think it was on an Instagram reel, and I wanted to show it to you. Okay, so you start out like this, and you wrap your scarf around like this. Okay, so even like this, it's nice and comfy, cozy. But then, if your earrings don't get stuck, you can pull the ends through this way. It's easier to do in front of a mirror than it is for me to do right here. Then I'm going to pull it back through this way. Okay, then I've got some tangled up earrings, and then it kind of looks like this. Now what's fun, you guys, is if you get especially cold or if it gets especially windy, then look, you have a little hood. Yeah, isn't that kind of fun? Yeah. So it's great. Plus, if you're like me, it's my appendages that really get cold. I can't stand when my ears get cold, when my neck gets cold, or when my hands and feet get cold. Which leads me to my boots. I've got on some hunter boots, and underneath my hunter boots, I have on some of the extra thick Bombas socks that I love so much. And these jeans were thrifted. They are Levi stretch jeans, skinny jeans that I got I think from my recent Goodwill, and my earrings I got from, I'm not sure where I got them. So there you go, there's my outfit of the day. Okay, something else that is performed beyond my expectations, and that is this little trio of these Touch of Gold hollies. These are a Southern Living plant, and I planted 1, 2, I've got a 3rd one over in here, I've got a 4th one on the other side, and they actually, in many respects, I think, in terms of being a cushiony, rounded evergreen, that profile I love so much, they actually look better than most of the boxwood. So in retrospect, I probably would have planted a few more of these than I actually did. In the future, I might even replace some of the boxwood that I have with some of these Touch of Gold hollies. But look at how wonderful they are.
It's pretty bright.
Now, I will say this about them. While they look great in pots, they don't overwinter as well in pots, or really even handle the stress of a very, very hot summer in pots as well. So in my experience, my empirical evidence tells me that these do better in the ground for me in my Zone 7 garden than they do in pots. But I think they absolutely are beautiful, and I think they will look great when all of these hydrangeas start to bloom in that kind of limey chartreusey green, and then in shades of blue, and the white wedding in shades of white. I think it'll just be fabulous. So they'll be a little bit more understated in the summer and in the spring, but nevertheless, they are invaluable in the winter garden for giving that kind of evergreen structure and evergreen presence. Something else that does it similar, but in a much deeper burgundy way, are these Obsession Andinas.
Shake too much here.
Yeah, can you switch around in here, Stuart?
I think I can get there.
Yeah. And if you'll notice, again, you'll notice this Better Boxwood Village, and look at how beautiful and green these are. No bronzing here. And then how beautiful those Obsession Andina look. And they're this dark purple, I think, because this is a southern exposure, so they're getting lots of strong, beautiful light from the south sun, but they're performing beautifully. I mean, they're not defoliating, they're not losing their leaves. I guess that's redundant, but they look, yeah, but they look really, really great. Now, something else I was discussing in a previous video, and this is my question of the day. I don't mind these seed heads when they are fresh and green, and I think they're kind of beautiful. But in the winter time, I don't like the way they look. Let's just say that. Now I mean, it doesn't bother me that much, but if I can come out here and spend some time in the sun and remove them, and I don't have to get on a ladder to do it, then I will. Now, the other reason that I like, and here's an example, Stuart. Let's get a profile shot of that tree, which I've not removed any seed heads on it. Mother Nature must have done that. The wind and some kind of just physical abrasion got those removed and sloughed off from the branches. So that's what that looked like. Versus this one over here. And see, to me, it looks just a little bit messier. I mean, obviously, it's still a beautiful tree, but it doesn't look quite so tidy and architectural. Maybe that's what I don't like, is it kind of messes with the strong architectural contours and lines of the trunks and the branches.
And it blocks the see-through ability.
Yeah, and yes, exactly. The see-through ability, the transparency, and that kind of,
hey, there you go.
Yeah, that kind of bugs me a little bit. Now, the other reason that I don't like them is that in the spring, I'm going to have all sorts of babies coming up. In the spring, you know, these bloom in that just fabulous, fabulous lilac pink. But I think that these brown seed heads really detract from the beauty, the fresh beauty of those lilac-y pink buds coming out. And see, it's quick work. Quick work. I'm getting in my yoga. I'm in my warrior pose here, removing these leaves or these seed heads. And again, when you're outside, you're just trying to get your 10 to 15 minutes of sun in. It is a quick little chore you can do that gives you instant gratification. We'll be right back. Well, another thing that I wanted to show you is the value of using some of your evergreen boughs and your evergreen foliage from your Christmas tree, from the greenery you may have had on your mantle as kind of a mulch in your garden beds. So this was the greenery I had on my mantle. So I just clipped it up and I put it out here, and look at the difference. So I've got all sorts of larkspur seedlings here. See all these that have germinated? Look at these that were covered up.
Oh, wow.
And got just a little bit more insulation. Now they're also in more shade because they've been underneath. Yeah, that's a pretty good example. So I'm going to cover those back up, and obviously I'll remove these again in the spring when I'm doing my garden cleanup. This is in a fairly inconspicuous location, so even as these evergreen boughs begin to lose some of their needles and kind of decompose, they'll break apart. But again, that's okay by me. Look here. Okay, see, this is the kind of stuff that Mother Nature just amazes me. So I had forced, you guys knew I had some hyacinths, okay? And I tossed them out here thinking, oh, I will stick those in the ground later. Well, I did not stick them in the ground. I just tossed them out here, and look.
Somebody's rooting.
It's got a little bloom coming out of it. Now, the bulbs are also kind of mushy, so I doubt that they will have the vigor for me to be able to plant them now. But nevertheless, that is just, the thing about winter is you don't have the floral bounty and the green abundance that you have at other times of year. So little treasures like this are just wonderful. And while I'm down here, I've got some henbit and stuff. Might as well clean it up while I can. I see some other little daffodils, and that's fun. I am just itching right now because today is an absolutely beautiful day. It's sunny, there's no wind, so it feels it feels warmer than it really is, particularly when they're in the sun. And I am just dying. I want to get out here. I want to start clipping back my Nepeta. I want to start cleaning up these leaves. I want spring. But we're a long way from that, folks. And so I'm just going to have to be patient. Now, one thing I am going to do, I'm trying something new. So this right here is the boxwood basil. And by the way, so many of you told me that you found it at Burpee Seed. So we'll try to put a link. Usually by now I have pulled out all the boxwood basil because it's not frost hardy. It's an annual. But I left it in place because last year some of it went to seed. So I'm even leaving the seed heads on here, even though they look kind of scruffy, in hopes that they will protect any seedlings underneath and kind of shelter them in case they want to germinate next spring, which is also the case with this Veronica. And then in late winter, I'll pull those out. But, you know, no guts, no glory, little gardening risks worth taking. Let me see what's going on out here. And it looks, from up here, it looks messy, it looks brown, it looks like a cottage garden is supposed to look in the winter time, which makes the design of this that much more important. So just keep walking carefully backwards, Stuart. I'll tell you if a car comes or a kid, or stroller, or a kid on a scooter. But what's nice is because it's up here on the upper level. Did you almost trip?
No, we're good.
Okay, on the upper level, and from a distance, you don't really see that. What you see is just an evergreen, an evergreen presence of the different boxwoods and such, and you can kind of see the scruffiness, but it's all framed beautifully by these patches of green. So from a distance, it doesn't look nearly as unkept as it does up close and personal. But that's the nature of a cottage garden. It has to kind of go through its ugly phase with buck teeth and scraggly limbs before it can really put on a show in the spring. And speaking of spring, on March 8th, if you're in the Oklahoma City area, I'm going to be speaking at the Myriad Gardens Garden School. I did that years ago in the Devon Tower. This year, I believe it's at the Minder School of Business at OCU, where I worked for many years. It'll feel like going home. And that's going to be on March 8th. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to be doing a couple of fundraising garden tours, and I'm also going to be working on some things with my friend Morgan from Heritage Hall to help some of her students embrace the love and the passion that is gardening. So thank you guys for hanging out with me today. These are just some of the kind of musings. I would take you to the back, but the back is very shady, it's very cold, and because it faces north, there's still a lot of slick spots. And there's no reason for us to go back there right now, so we're just going to be cozy here in the sun. You guys take care. Remember, if you can, to subscribe, follow, hit the like button, but most importantly, share this with others who might want to be a part of this community. You guys take care.